Hello everybody, it's Stephen here for the Idiot Quilter, and welcome to this week's episode. And we're going to start right in with my grandmother's quilt. The one that I've been doing, you know, to reproduce what my grandmother created in the late 1970s. It's done. Completely done, all layered, all quilted, all done, and it's now sitting upstairs in the guest bedroom next to the original quilt. And I'm really happy with the way it turned out. I did the quilting using a walking foot, and I did it as a wavy line. Now, I thought that instead of trying to put the two of them up here side by side, which is very awkward in this space, I would do it as a video. So I'm going to insert that video in here right now. And I apologize to any of you that have caught my vlog earlier, because I put the same little video clip in the vlog too. So just bear with me. It doesn't last that long. So here it is. My grandmother made me the brown and peach quilt in the late 70s or very early 80s. It was from a design she drew out on cardboard, colored in with pencil crayons, then cut the fabric with scissors. She did not use a rotary cutter. Used probably polyester fabric, because printed cotton was not widely available at the time. Then hand-pieced and hand-quilted the entire quilt. I hated the colors. It's a beautiful quilt, and the work that went into it is astounding, but the color scheme is one of my least favorites. However, this quilt hung on a wall in our first house until we moved into the home we are now in. The problem with the house that we now occupy is that there is not enough wall to hang this quilt on, and the colors do not go with our decor. So the quilt, unfortunately, was put away on a top shelf in a closet, and there it has sat for almost 25 years. At the time this took place, I was not a quilter and did not have the appreciation I have today for the art of quilting. So I dug it out of the closet and decided to remake this quilt according to my grandmother's hand-drawn pattern. But this time I did it in my favorite colors, which are blues. I also used the technology that's available to a 21st century quilter. Rotary cutters, machine applique, domestic machine quilting. Yes, I quilted this on a domestic, not a long arm, and I'm pleased with my result. Now the original and my redo version of my grandmother's quilt rests side by side on my guest room bed. My grandmother's quilt is no longer in the closet. So the original quilt measures 76 by 96 inches, and my redo measures 68 by 89. It's a little smaller, but I chose not to put prairie points on my version. I wanted a more modern version. Overall, this was a very personal experience, and I have paid homage to my grandmother's sewing abilities, quilting abilities, and now the two quilts exist side by side on my guest room bed. So I'm very pleased with the end result, as you can see, and I finally got my quilt done in blue. So that leaves me now for my next project. Now, you know, I've been talking about my Aussie quilt, and off and on. And I'm going to get to it. I'm going to do it. And I have started it. Now, I already had this piece done. And this is the applique of a kangaroo that I bought 2 years ago when we were in Australia. And I did it when we got home. I have three more, and I think I've mentioned this before, three other animals, Aussie animals, and they're all done in the same style. My original idea was that I was going to take the 4 of these animals when they were done and make those the center part of my quilt and then build around it. Well, each one of these blocks is 20 inches by 20 inches. I could cut them down to a little smaller, but I don't want to, because I think they look pretty good in this size. So, as I said, the other 3 are not done, but I've decided that I'm not going to do the other 3 for this particular quilt. I'll do those for something else sometime down the road, maybe. And I'm going to build the quilt around this single one. Now, what I'm going to do is, remember I talked about doing the star on a circle in a square? And I had those templates I printed out on a 3D printer, but didn't like how, because they created all kinds of Y seams and curves. And so I redeveloped it using my circular sewing tool for my sewing machine. And I showed you that. Well, I thought, actually, that might be a good thing to do for this quilt. I picked the 3 colors that are in the Aussie flag, red, white, and blue, created a 7-point star for this, because the 7-point star is one of the stars on the Aussie flag, and it represents, each point represents the state in Australia, and it's called the Federation Star. So it looks something like this, the star. Okay? So what I thought I would do, though, to enhance that, is I have some embroidery files that feature different animals that are indigenous to Australia. So like the kangaroo. So I embroidered those, machine embroidered an animal in the center of the star on each one of these. Now, it works out, and don't ask me how this worked out mathematically correct, but it did. If I don't put any sashing around this, and I do a row, this is difficult to show you holding it up. If I do a row down the sides and a row on the top and the bottom, they work out equidistant. With the 1/4-inch seam allowance, they work perfectly on this without having to add a coping strip or a sashing piece. I will have a corner piece on each side that is free, and I'm just going to cut a piece of fabric, the right size for that, in white, and I'm going to embroider some more of these animals, except I have some on that file that are actually superimposed on top of the Australian flag, so 1 in each corner, and that is going to make up the center part of my Aussie quilt. And then from there, I will take the fabrics that I bought in Australia and I will design those. I think I'm going to use sort of a star motif with those as well. Different from these squares, of course. More conventional type of blocks. And those are just going to go around this center part, and I'll work it out from there, where I'll go. So that's my plan. I need 12 of these squares, and I'm alternating them. Excuse me. Hope that didn't blow out your ears. I'm alternating them between a red circle on a blue square and a blue circle on a red square. And so it'll just be every other one in a round. So that's what I'm going to do with that. It's going to take some while. Each one of these takes about 30 minutes to embroider, just the embroidery part, but I have them all prepared, ready to go with the embroidery. And I think I only have one more to embroider, because yesterday I was on a men's Canadian men's Quilters Guild, or Quilters. Let's get the name right. Canadian Men Quilters. That's it. Why do I have so much trouble saying that? We had a sew day yesterday, and I worked on a lot of these then, so that's how I got a lot of them done. And just as an aside, I always enjoy the Canadian men's sew days because it's men. And I'm so used to going to something like that when it's all women and I'm just the only man. So it's something a little different and very enjoyable. Okay, so that's what I'm working on. Now, let's revisit for a minute the mystery quilt that I told you about. Couple of things I want to show you. You know, last week I was asking or showing you the colors I was going to use in it, and I had a few comments about one of the colors. And I appreciate the comment because it really did make me think. So I'm just laying out here. Okay, where is everything? Oh, I'm sorry. You know, I should be better prepared. Okay, what I was going to say is, forget the mystery quilt for a second. The Tim Holtz quilt that I asked you about, which pattern I should use, and the majority of people have told me that they think the large single star-like pattern was the one to go with, and that's the one I'm going to go with. I've decided. And you know that I'm using these fabrics, the Tim Holtz fabrics, for all of that. Well, I ordered some more of this line of abandon from a place out west in Regina called Peachtree Quilt and Northgate Sewing Center. They're one and the same. And it came today, And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that place, but I wanted more of that fabric. And plus I got another one that in the same line, in the abandoned, which I think is going to work with the mystery quilt really well. Now, I forgot to bring it all out to show you, so just give me a second. Okay, I think I've got myself organized now. So I'm talking about the mystery quilt, and I picked out my fabrics according to the instructions that we were given. Still don't know yet what the pattern's going to look like, although I did some research, and we'll talk about that in a second. So I'm just going to bring the camera down so you can see these fabrics that I picked again. There, I think I have them all in the shot. Okay, so these are the ones I'm using. This is my focal fabric, and I'm pulling the colors from that from my other ones. But you know there was one fabric, this one, number 4, which takes 3.2 meters for a throw. Now, somebody made a comment about this, and rightly so, and I double-checked the pattern, and yes, I did not read the pattern incorrectly. It actually takes, for a throw, 3.2 meters of fabric 4. And I'm trying to figure out whether this is also going to be backing. It doesn't say in the instructions I've gotten so far, it doesn't say that that's also for backing. But it seems like an awful lot of fabric in comparison to the other fabrics and the amounts you need here. I mean, the next biggest amount I think is 3/4 of a meter. And I think it's this one, the focal. So I don't know. But the other comment, which was even more helpful, was the person thought there'd be too much white, too much lights in this quilt if I went with this one as fabric 4. Because I have this one, which picks up the purples and a little bit of the greens in here, very subtly. And yes, I feel that the same for that, but I didn't have in my stash 3.2 meters of a fabric that I could use. I really want to pick up some of the green that's in here, and that's what this person suggested as well. So I told you that I ordered more fabric of that abandoned line by Tim Holtz. And this is one that I got. Now, I just liked it. I wasn't thinking about this, but when I saw it in real life, I thought, you want to know something? I think that would go very well with this one. It's got some of the shades of green in it that are here. And yeah, so in comparison to the white, let's put this in the order. I think this looks better than having that one in there. So thank you for that advice. Now, my only problem is I still don't have 3.2 meters of this, but I've just ordered another 2 meters. So in total, I'll have 4 meters of it when the other comes. And I'm hoping I get that before I actually need to use this. Well, if I don't have it by then I'll just simply work around it. You know, so I'll be a little bit behind. I don't know how this mystery quilt thing's going to work. I don't know if it's 1 piece a month or how it works. But I'm much more happy with that one in here than the white that I had here. So that was good, and I thank those of you who commented on that and gave me suggestions. It truly was a great help. Okay, one thing I realized after I finished up this episode is there was something I left out that I meant to show you. So I'm going to insert that in here at some point. And this is what it is. I don't like the mystery quilt idea. Well, it's not the idea I don't like a mystery. I like to have it solved. And I did some research on the internet looking for the mystery quilt. And this is what I came up with. I think this might actually be the quilt that I'll be making. I don't like it. Sorry, I don't like it. I don't like the colors that are in it. I'm not that fond of the overall design, although it may look very different if this indeed is the right one with the fabrics I have picked. I mean, I'm going to do it, but right now, if I saw this picture, and as I said, if this is the right one, before I signed up for the mystery quilt, I wouldn't have signed up for it because it's not grabbing me. But we'll see. sometimes the things that don't grab me that I do end up being something I really love. So we'll see from that. So I thought I want to show you this. So sorry for sticking this in wherever I'm sticking it. So that's projects. And of course, I still have my UFOs. Let's pull this up. This is my last UFO right behind me. And it's huge. Absolutely huge. This one was a pattern. I think I took it in a class. Or did I do it in a class? I'm not sure if I even did it in a class. I think I just found the pattern and really liked it. And it's called Doves of Hope. I love the colors that are in it. It is a mixture of batiks and standard cottons. Now somebody asked me, can you, do you have any problems mixing batiks with regular cotton? No, they're all cotton. So it's not a problem there whatsoever. And basically the way I pick my fabrics, when I pick the colors, I pick whatever I think goes well together. And if some of those happen to be batiks mixed in with regular cottons, I don't have a problem with that, as you can see. So this is a huge quilt. I didn't realize until I took it off the hanger where it was all folded up and pulled it out how big it is, because what you can't see is how much more of it goes on the floor. This is truly a queen size quilt. So it's UFO number 9, and I found that I still have lots of the fabric that goes into this, so I can either piece a backing or use one big piece. I don't think I have anything wide enough for the backing for this, so I'll probably have to piece it. But I found my little box that says Doves of Hope on it, and it's full of all the fabrics that I use, so I'm sure I can make a backing for it when the time comes. But that's UFO number 9. And yep, I really like it too. But again, it's got the colors in it that I love. Maybe I should extend myself and get into some other color ways, but if you like it, go for it. I mean, there's nothing worse than working on a quilt with colors you don't really like. I mean, that doesn't keep you going. It becomes a chore, and this is supposed to be fun, and it is fun. So go with the colors you love. Okay, so that was UFO number 9, Doves of Hope. So I am going to do a bit of a demo for you now. Actually, I have already video or recorded it for you. And it has to do with my grandmother's quilt. Of course, I had to layer it, and I hate layering quilts. Now, I have this one method that I've talked about before and did a video about a few episodes ago, where I saw that some people were layering their quilts on a wall. And as you know, I don't have a wall big enough to do that. So I decided to create a wall using collapsible tables. And that worked very successfully on the quilt that I tried it on. So I thought I would do the same thing with my grandmother's quilt. Did not work. The quilt's too big. So I guess on that method, the way I'm doing it, there's a limit. And my grandmother's quilt is almost a queen size, and it was just too big and heavy. So I had to lay my tables out horizontally, the normal way a table is set up, put them together, and I did it that way. And it worked okay. I used a pool noodle as well. I'd seen a video about using a pool noodle to roll your quilt up as you're basting it. So I'm going to show you how I did that. I did a video of this step by step so that you can see how I layered my grandmother's quilt. And I'm going to put that in right here. Okay, you've probably seen this method in another one of my videos earlier, but I'm doing it again for the second time with a much larger quilt. And this is what I call wall layering, or in my case, collapsible table layering. And I have 3 really large folding tables set up on their end. I've put them side by side, and I'll show you the back of this in a minute so you get more of a feel for it. And now I've taken my backing fabric, and I've cut the backing fabric about 10 inches bigger than what I actually need. And I've laid it out on these tables, smoothed it out the best I can, and I have taped it with painter's tape on the edges to hold it there. Now, it's not long enough to handle the whole quilt, but that's okay, because this part at the bottom, the quilt will overhang onto that, and what I'll simply do is tip the tables back up onto their horizontal position, and I'll finish it up on from there. But I'll show you what this looks like from the back. So here at the back, you can see the tables have been folded out. There's 3 of them. These are large tables. They're 30 inches wide by 72 inches long. And this is what's making basically my wall for getting my layers together. And I've clamped. I didn't have to, but I did, just to hold them a little bit more steady. The only thing I don't like about the system is these tables do not open completely flat. See, there's a bit of an angle there on. Let me come over on this side. You'll probably see what I'm talking about a little better. You see here, that's where the join is, and you can't make it go perfectly straight. And I tried different things trying to do that, but nothing seemed to work. So you do have to live with that, but that's not going to cause me a major problem. At least I don't think so. Now I thought it might be clever and clamp them. As you see here, it's a big clamp. This is the only one that's holding. The other clamps just didn't want to cooperate. But possibly it's the type of clamp I've got. They were cheap clamps. Plus I don't have much of an edge on these tables to really clamp it to. My idea was I'd clamp them all along the top. That would keep it straight there, and then I could put my painter's tape, as I already have done, along the edges and smooth it out. Now I did iron this big piece of backing fabric before I put it up, but you know what it's like trying to iron something this big. So yes, there's still a few wrinkles here and there. I'll just have to try and smooth those out the best I can when I put the batting on this, and that's next. Okay, the vertical wall idea with the tables didn't work this time. I think mainly because the first time I did it, it was for a much smaller quilt and that worked. But for one this size, which is almost a queen size, it's not going to work. So I've taken my tables and put them down on the floor flat and spread my backing onto that, and I've taped it where I can just to hold it steady and smooth out the wrinkles as much as I possibly can. So now I'm going to lay the batting on top of it. So I've added a table to the end here. This is not the same as those other 3. This is another one I had, which is a little bit shorter, but it's at the same height level. So I'm able to pick up that overhang and tape it down on this side just to make things a little bit straighter. Now I'm going to try and put the batting on top of this. Okay, as you can see, I've put my batting down. I put it right across the whole backing piece, smoothed it out the best I could, and now I've got a pool noodle in there and I'm rolling it up, and I've peeled back the top a little bit because I'm going to spray baste this. And my idea is that once I get the top secured with the spray basting, I will just slowly unroll the pool noodle and smooth it out as I go. Spray a little, smooth it out, spray a little, smooth it out until I get to the end, and hopefully that will get out most of my bumps and bulges. Okay, so I've got the batting all spray basted down. I used 505. Some people worry about overspray. I don't, because I have found that I don't really get a lot of overspray. Spray it about 8 inches away from the surface and you should be okay. But anyways, I've never had a problem with that. So it's all smoothed out now the best I can. The pool noodle really helps, as it, you know, you can do a little section at a time. I was doing about a foot of it at a time, smoothing it down, then rolling it, then spraying, then rolling out another foot and smoothing it down. It's not perfect. I can't get every little wrinkle out, but there's no real major bumps or bulges. I think I'll just take my hands and go over it again to smooth it out as much more as I can, and then I'm going to put the top on. So I laid my quilt top on top of the batting and I have smoothed it all out, and at the very top I rolled back just about a foot of the top part, put the spray basting down on the batting and smooth the top back on, sort of to act as an anchor. And now I'm going to do the same thing as I did with the batting. I'm going to take my pool noodle, put it at the end, roll it up, and do 1 foot sections with the spray basting. So you can get an idea of what this looks like when I do it. I've set up my camera here on the edge and hopefully it won't fall off, and I'm going to show you how I do this. So what I've got is the top on the pool noodle. And now I'm just going to spray about a 1 foot section with the spray basting, and I'm just going to roll this down, and as I do, I just smooth it out towards the pool noodle. And as long as this can doesn't plug up on me, I've had a few of them do that. Now you may say you're using an awful lot of that spray basting. Yes, I am. I want it to be very secure. There are those that would debate with me whether I'm using too much, but it works for me. So, and you know, whatever works for you is just fine. Now, my spray can is getting clogged. This is where it gets tricky because I can hardly reach over into this area. It's times like this when I wish I had 6-foot arms. Let's move over here to the other side. Sorry if I've just bounced the camera. I'm patting out any bumps or bulges as I go. You want to be careful you don't stretch your quilt when you do this.
Not sure how far I am into the shot. Yeah, I'm out. Just going to turn it around this way a little bit. Move the can. Let's go down here. And maybe a little bit more. Probably in the way.
Now I always like to make sure the corners get enough. Then I've got this little overhang piece here, but I'm not going to worry about that because there's enough here to hold it. Okay, then I just go all around it, just smooth it down more. You know, this is a process that takes a while. Don't be in a rush when you're doing this, because if your quilt layers are well basted, if you've got most of your major lumps and bumps out, and the more you get out the better, the easier this is going to be to quilt. Okay. I could use a little bit of spray there. Of course, the spray's at the other end of the table. And you couldn't see what I'm doing up at that end, could you? What would be really nice is if this whole surface was covered so that I could actually iron on it. But it's not, but that would be nice, because then you could put a little steam on this and go to town. And I have tried taking my larger wool mat and placing it underneath and doing that, but I find that doesn't work very well and it takes you even longer. So, you know, just by smoothing it out seems to work pretty good. Of course, if you had a long arm, you wouldn't have to do this, would you? But I don't. So, the next thing is to take this and trim it up. So I'm going to do that while it's still on the table because that makes it easier for cutting. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to use these scissors right here. You notice they have a flat bottom to them. These are great for cutting batting or cutting your sandwich layers down. I love them. And I didn't take any of the tape off that's there. I'm leaving it exactly where it is, and I'm going to trim it. And I'm going to trim it so that I've got about a couple of inches on at the end of each border of both the batting and the backing fabric. Now you'd want to leave more than this amount all around your edges if you were going to put this on a long arm. I think they like to have 4 to 6 inches all the way around extra. Okay, and this is where my arms are too short, so I'm going to have to go up at the top of this, which I'm probably out of the shot right now. I'm not that concerned how straight these cuts are, because it doesn't really matter. Okay, that's garbage. Now let's do this end. I think I lied to you. I said I'd like to leave about 2 inches. I'm leaving more like 1 inch right now, and there's a reason for that, and I'll explain that to you after I get this all cut. I'll show you why. Again, this is not the method that everybody uses, and the Quilt Police would probably nail me for this, but Quilt Police are a myth, and if it works for me, then that's all that really matters, right? So you do whatever works for you. I think I'm going to have to trim this a little bit closer, but I'll come back around to that once I get down to this other end. I'm just going to reposition you.
These are great scissors. They're doing this. Now at this point I'm probably out of the shot. So let me come over here and readjust again. And we'll go along this bottom, which is hanging over the edge, but that's okay, I can work with that. And I'm just going to turn this side again a little closer.
Now yes, your batting and backing when you go to quilt this will shrink a little bit. That's why you leave some excess on the edges, but I have found that it doesn't shrink that much. And I need this extra little bit here, this close, for something I'm going to do in just a moment's time.
And you probably can't see that. Okay, so I've trimmed it all the way around.
And now I'm going to get something and show you what I do next. Okay, so I said I would explain why I leave this much overhang on here. Well, it's because I have these clips. And what I do is I go around and I clip everything to make it secure. Now these are basically a form of Wonder Clip, although these are probably not actual Wonder Clip, but they are the style of, and they're bigger. And I just clip every 6 or 7 inches along, and I find that this helps keep everything in place just before I'm ready to quilt it. Now, some people go ahead and they do a little bit of stitch basting, about 1/8 of an inch in, all the way around, just to secure it before they start quilting. I have done that, and that works. But really, I don't like doing it. Just because it takes more time, and the clips seem to work pretty good. Now it depends. On a quilt this size, I may still do a little basting around it, because this is going to go under my domestic machine. And I'm out of the shot again, aren't I? I am. So let's work our way down this end. And yeah, it gives you a little bit more security when you're working on a really big quilt to do that. And I probably will. And the way I will do that is with my walking foot. And Most of the time, I know you should probably adjust your stitch length so it's a larger stitch length when you do the basting, so it's easy to pull out. But I find I don't end up pulling out the basting stitches because the binding, I do it close enough to the edge of the quilt that when I put the binding on, it essentially covers up the basting stitch. But I try to leave these clips on for as long as possible because until you get the center part of the quilt quilted, then it's kind of secure, then you're okay. Again, this is my method. I use it for most of my quilts, and it works for me. If you've got a method that works for you, stick to it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So I'm just about all the way around. I love these clips. I use these clips for a lot of things. Okay, and I've got a few clips left over, so just for added security, I'll stick them here and there, wherever there's maybe a little bigger gap. And only one more thing to do, and I'll show you what that is in just a moment. So I'm not going to be able to quilt this today, and I usually do not try to set up for quilting the same day that I layer a quilt, because to be quite honest, I'm a little tired right now. This has taken me now almost 2 hours since I started the video. For you it didn't look that long, but it did. And so to store this until I'm ready to quilt it, I'm going to take it and roll it up on the pool noodle again. This is where sometimes it would be nice to have a little longer, a second pool noodle, but I don't.
And I'm not doing it real tight. Try and keep it as even as possible. And I know you can't see it. Slide it back into view.
Okay, and I'm just going to take a couple of pins and stick them in along that bottom edge, and it's secured, and then I can take that and set it out in my sewing room, and when I get ready to quilt it, I'll just unroll it and away I'll go. So that's how I baste a quilt. Let me switch the set camera around here. Okay, so that's how I baste a large quilt. I started out trying to use the vertical method that I used once before, but that seems to work better with a smaller quilt, one that's under the size of a queen size. This one, you saw the problems that I had to lay it out on the tables. The trick is to have tables big enough, and as I said, I have 3 of those really large 72 by 30 inch apiece. 3 of them work well for most quilts, but for this one I could have used 1 more table. So I think the next time I'm at Costco, whenever that's going to be, of course, I'll see if I can get 1 more, because I think that will work very well. So that's how I do it. So I hope you got something out of this, or you just might think I'm crazy. Whatever, you might not be wrong. So as you can see, I was very successful with that method, and I didn't have to get down on my hands and knees on the floor, because once you're down you may never get back up again. And because my floor is covered in carpet, that creates all kinds of bumps and bulges in my quilt. So I got it all layered all together, and then I quilted it. Now I will tell you that I did have a couple of tucks in the back of the quilt. They're not that noticeable, and I'm never going to point them out to anybody, and I'm not going to worry about them. It is what it is. So it didn't turn out quite perfect, but that method for layering it does work better. It still takes some time. I think I mentioned it on the video. It took me over 2 hours to get that quilt layered, but it worked. So I hope you glean something from that. Okay, so I have some shout outs here. One is to a YouTube channel that I go to when I'm trying to figure out how to do something like sew curves or Y seams or mitered corners, and that's one that's done by Fons and Porter. Now Fons and Porter in the quilting industry have been around for years and years and years, and they basically are the go-to for expert advice on how to do things all quilting. And so I do refer to them often. So I've put the link for them in the show notes below. so you can check them out. So I know some of you have asked me to do a tutorial on how to do mitered corners, and I don't think I'm really going to, because it's very difficult to record something like that. You really need another cameraman, and I'm pretty much it. I do it all. And especially if you're going to show mitered corners on a big quilt, there's a lot of slugging fabric back and forth. Mitered corners are not difficult. What makes them somewhat difficult is the size of the quilt that you're doing them with. But Fons and Porter and others on YouTube have excellent videos that show you how to do this already, and especially with Fons and Porter, they're professionals. They have people who run their cameras for them when they're explaining things. So, you know, you're going to get a higher quality video tutorial on something like that than what I can deliver for you. That doesn't mean I will never do it, but why reinvent the wheel when it's already been done very well out there? Okay, now the other thing I want to talk to you about, and I'm really excited about this. You know that I ordered fabric from a place in Regina that I had just discovered online called Northgate Sewing Center / Peachtree Quilt. I think they're all, well, they are one company, but I think their facility is probably attached. I don't know. I've never been there to see it. But that's where I ordered the fabric, the Tim Holtz Abandoned line from them. And it came today, actually. It took a little while to get, not that long. I ordered it December the 8th. This is January 11th. They were very prompt in their shipping, so it had absolutely nothing to do with Peachtree Quilts. Not a thing. It had everything to do with Canada Post, because anything that comes to Southern Ontario usually ends up in the black hole of Mississauga, which is a city right next door to Toronto, and that's where one of the biggest distribution centers for Canada Post is located for Canada. And when things go in there, well, you don't know when they're going to come out. So it has nothing to do with Peachtree Quilts. Completely out of their control. But, you know, it still wasn't bad because I ordered it between Christmas and New Year's. So busy time of the year. People, you know, going off on holidays or whatever, such as holidays can be these days. And, you know, and they also have a big announcement on their site, you know, due to COVID, blah, 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 blah. They use COVID as the excuse for everything these days, don't they? And and I wasn't in a big rush. So really, I got it in 2 weeks. And that was given the circumstances that I've already stated to you. So, you know, depending where you live, it could probably come much sooner for you. So, but I got a surprise. The other day, I got an email from Peachtree Quilts by a man named Patrick King. And I think Patrick might be the owner. I'm not sure, or manager. I'm not really sure what his, oh, he's the owner. I just saw that in the email. And I'm going to read the email to you because this was a real surprise, a pleasant one. Hello, Stephen. My name is Patrick, and I'm the owner of Northgate Sewing Center and Peachtree Quilt Shop. It has recently come to my attention that you purchased some fabric from our shop and shared your thoughts on your YouTube channel. Thank you very much for shopping with us, and thank you for taking the time to talk about your experience on your channel. You have directed at least one new customer to our store that had no idea that we are here because of this. We really appreciate any and all the new business that comes into our store and to our online store. As a token of our appreciation for the mention of our store, I have included a coupon for you to use for free shipping on your next purchase from us. We hope you will continue to shop with us from time to time. I have also included a 10% off coupon for you and your fan base to use as well. It can be used on our online store towards the purchase of regular price fabrics, notions, and parts. There's no pressure to advertise this for us at all. Feel free to use it for yourself or give it to anyone else you think would like it. And then they had their website address down here. So I thought that was really, really nice of them. I do not talk about stores or products because I'm sponsored. I've never been sponsored by anybody at any time in any of my videos, either on Idiot Quilter or on the vlogs for Bland Designs or Stephen and Walter Live. No, never. I have never gone out and, quite frankly, looked for people to sponsor me because, as I've said, I am not a big concern. I'm small potatoes in the YouTube world. I mean, I have just under 4,000 subscribers. And you know, to me, getting like a little over 200 views per video, which I've been getting lately, that makes me ecstatic. I'm not like a lot of other ones out there that have Ks after the number of views. I mean, like 14K, meaning 14,000 views, and in one day or something like that. I would dearly love to have that, but I don't. So I don't, if I talk to you about a product that I have bought or a company I've dealt with, I give you a very honest opinion. And usually I don't talk about the ones that I've had problems with. I like to keep it a little bit more positive, and I talk about the good ones out there. And this was one of them. I was impressed by their quickness in shipping my order. It was the next day I got an email from them, told me that my order, actually I think it may have been the same day, come to think it, that my order had been shipped. And barring Canada Post, you know, I thought that was really good. Not only that, I think their prices are fair on their fabric. It's a little bit more than I'm used to paying, but you know, the place that I usually go to, my local quilt store, which is excellent, have the best prices anywhere for fabric. But, you know, I liked what they had on their site, and it was only about $1.50 more a meter for what I bought. Now, some of their fabrics, I looked at things a little bit more, are a little bit higher, but they are still within the range of what most quilt stores charge. I didn't think their shipping was out of line. It was about $18. I'm not sure how the shipping is figured out, whether it's by how much you buy or what. It came by economy mode, which says 3 to 5 days, but you know, Canada Post. But that's, again, that's Canada Post. That's not Peachtree. So, you know, overall, I was very happy with the company, and that's why I shared the information about them. Also, I liked their selection of fabrics. They had some things there that I'd never seen before, like the Tim Holtz fabrics. So, yeah, this really thrilled me. So, I'm also going to read you an email that came from another person who is actually the person who took the time to let Peachtree Quilts know that she found them because of me. And she wrote, I don't usually comment, but I thought I would let you know that I really enjoy all three of your channels. I was the one that told Northgate that I heard about them through you. Remember, Northgate is their other half. It's probably more their sewing machine side of the company, of Peachtree. I placed an order of the full line of the Tim Holtz fabric the day after you talked about it. I received my order on 7th of January, so was extremely pleased to find out how quick the delivery was. I live in Alberta near Edmonton, so maybe that is why I received it so quickly. I'm thinking of making a trip out there in the summer if things are better. They're located in Regina, Saskatchewan. Sounds like a nice road trip. Anyway, I'm very happy that they showed their appreciation for the shout out from you. I think it's great to support Canadian channels and businesses. So that was from Yvonne, and I thank her for that. So she ordered it the next day. So she ordered it. My video went up on December the 27th. She ordered it the same day I did, December 28th, and she got it January 7th. So she got it in just about a week's time. So that's pretty good. So she's another happy customer, so it's not just me. Now, the coupon code that I was given, I tried today. I ordered more fabric. I went through all of their fabric lines and I picked out, well, it came out to well over $300 worth of fabric that I bought. And so I plugged in my code that he gave me and it didn't work. And I was afraid I was going to lose my order though, if, you know, I went out of the program. Well, I didn't, it stayed. But I thought, well, I better drop Patrick a note because obviously there was a little bit of a mistake. And, you know, I can see that happening. No big deal. So I did send him an email and said to him, okay, I tried the code you gave me, and it didn't work. Within 5 minutes. Okay, sorry about the interruption. My phone went off, and that's what I'm recording this on. And I was stumbling all around trying to turn off the camera and answer the phone at the same time. So, anyways, where was I? Oh, yes. So I tried the code didn't work. So I wrote to Patrick. Within 5 minutes, I got an email back from him, and he said he was sorry about that, but it's fixed now. I went back into the site. My order was still sitting there, and away I went. And so now I have a whole bunch of new fabric that I'm expecting from Peachtree Quilts. So, although I am not sponsored by them, I really believe in them. And in fact, that whole little mix up there with the code, the way that Patrick got right on it immediately and fixed it, just tells me that their customer service is excellent. And that's what I always look for in a company when I deal with them. I look for more so than even their price. I'll pay a little bit more if I can get excellent customer service. So I'm going to put the code so you can get 10% discount as well from their site. I'll put the link to their website in my show notes, and the code is in there as well, and it's really easy. It's Stephen Bland, all one word, Stephen with a V, so STEVENBLAND. Put it all in capitals. I don't know if that makes a difference or not, but that's the way he put it in the email. And 10. And the 10 is the number 10, 10, and put that right after Bland. So it's all one code, but the code will be in the show notes below. And I thank Patrick for that. I think it's very generous of him, and I was absolutely thrilled to get that information from him. Okay, so that takes me now to something new I'm going to be doing. And this will be the first one of these. There's an unwritten rule amongst quilters that you never point out your mistakes on a finished quilt. You should just ignore it. If somebody notices a mistake and brings it up, well, if they used to be your friend, they're not your friend anymore. And if it's anybody else, don't pay any attention to it. Well, I'm going to break the rule. I'm going to be my own quilt police, and I am going to take over the next few weeks one of my quilts, and I'm going to point out my mistakes or what I could have done better. Now, why am I doing this? Because I think you can learn from this. If you're a beginner quilter, you will have these same mistakes in yours as well. Maybe I can help you avoid them. So, I'm going to show you my very first quilt. This was the one that got me into quilting. So I'm just going to get up here and reveal that quilt to you. And there it is. Isn't it huge? It's not. It's not huge at all. Okay, so we're back. So as you can see, this is not a very large quilt. It is a small lap quilt. It's also a sampler, which at the time that I did this, I didn't know what that meant. But basically, it just means there are a bunch of blocks in here that are all different and are all put together, so you learn different techniques. Now, at first glance, I think I did a pretty good job for my first quilt. But when I start examining it a little bit more closely and with the eye I have now as a quilter, I can see where I've gone wrong. For example, my flying geese, I cut off their points. And in one case up at the top, you see the point, but there's too much left there. So that means my 1/4 inch seam allowance was definitely off. Now, what you want to do is learn how your machine will handle a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And there are tricks to doing that. Basically, set your machine up for what you think is a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Do a row of stitching, do several of them, measure it with a good ruler, and you'll determine if you have to make an adjustment to your needle setting to get your 1/4 inch seam allowance. On most good machines, new ones, you're not going to have too much of a problem, but you could have. And what's really important is that if you're having a problem with your 1/4 inch seam allowance, or even if you're not, but you switch machines for some reason, no two machines are alike. So you want to take that into consideration. You can also see up here on these half square triangles, I cut off the points. Same thing. I didn't really understand the importance of a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And that's probably one of the most fundamental things about quilting, is knowing what that is, what a 1/4 inch seam allowance is, because you can't avoid it. You need it. Now, most of these blocks are very basic blocks. Like, here's a 9 patch, but take a look at it. Each one of those red squares in that 9 patch should be equal. They should all be the same size. They're not. Part of that is because of my inaccuracy on my 1/4 inch seam allowance, but also probably inaccuracy in cutting as well. The same with this one down here. You see this one is a little bit more rectangular than square. So that's a problem. I'm also looking at some of the wonky stitching that I have here, like these little tiny ones here. Now, mind you, I would not suggest as a rank beginner that you do something that has pieces this small. But my stitching is wonky in there. What else can I say about this quilt? Well, I guess I decided to do stitch in the ditch when I quilted it. I guess that's what the pattern said to do. Well, my stitch in the ditch was not too much in the ditch. It's more around the ditch. And you want to know something? That is something that takes a lot of practice. Stitching in the ditch for quilting is not as easy as you might think. It is very difficult actually to get it lined up. That's why a lot of quilters do something that's called stitch near the ditch, so that you actually see the stitching. It doesn't really go down into that seam allowance, but it becomes a decorative feature, and that's easier to manipulate. And you can see it really wonky up here. So trying to keep things straight. Now, since then, I do have a foot that helps with that kind of setup, and I probably did not use a walking foot on this one. In fact, I'm sure I didn't use a walking foot on this quilt because I didn't have one at the time. Now I'm trying to think if this was after I did this on the Brothers sewing machine that I had, that I bought for like $185 at Costco before I bought my first real machine, my Janome, or did I do it on the Janome? I'm not sure. I can't remember. I suspect I did it on the Brother machine, which was a bit of a problem as well. So another thing, if you're going to get into quilting, you do want to buy a fairly decent sewing machine. Now, that doesn't mean you have to spend thousands and thousands of dollars if you've never owned a sewing machine before, but get something that's quality. If you get one of these ones that Costco sells for a ridiculously low price, like for under 200 bucks, your chances are you don't have really the best machine to get into quilting. Now, if you have one of those machines and you're using it for other things and you're thinking about trying to quilt, well, yeah, it doesn't mean run out and buy another machine, because you may not like quilting. But it does, just take into consideration that, you need a good quality machine to make a good quality quilt. Now, borders. Kind of wonky. Again, that's probably my cutting. It's probably the tension as well. Probably the way I'm holding the quilt as I feed it through. I probably wasn't letting the feed dogs do their job. They're there for a purpose, to pull your fabric through. I was probably forcing it. I may have been trying to sew faster than I was capable too. Now, one thing, my binding. This is interesting because I actually didn't do such a bad job on the binding. I got my corners, get this in the shot. I got my corners fairly well mitered, and my stitching is fairly straight. Take a look at the back. Yeah, I did okay on this for my first effort. So that's not too bad at all. Now let's take a look at the back at the quilting. Since it was stitch in the ditch, Yeah, it's a little wonky. It's not that straight, but it's not horrible. Not for my first time. And I don't see any tucks in this. Oh, wait. Maybe I do. Oh, yeah. I have a major tuck. Try folks that see it. Right down there. That's a major tuck. Okay. You know, on a quilt this size, I shouldn't have had any. But then again, it was my first quilt. So I didn't know any better. But I was really impressed. Now, I'll tell you, this was the quilt that got me into quilting. I looked around at a quilt store, actually one that doesn't exist anymore in my area. And I was just absolutely fascinated with all the gizmos and gadgets, the rulers and all that kind of stuff. I knew nothing about fabric. And I saw these fabrics, which I now know are K-facet fabrics. And as soon as I saw them in their bright colors, I loved them. And then I saw this quilt hanging over a chair, and there was a sign that it was a class. And there was a kit available. I asked the lady at the store, well, I'm a rank beginner. I've never done a quilt before. I really love that fabric. And I think the kit wasn't too bad for price. It came with all the fabrics in it. Of course, for about 70 bucks, I think. And the book. And I said to the lady in the store, I said, do I need to take the class to do this, or could I teach myself to do this quilt if I just follow the instructions in the book? She says, no, you could do it. In the book, the instructions are very, very clear. And so I became a quilter. And that was my first one, and it was from there, well, you know the rest of the story. Now, I'm going to put the camera back in its stand, and I'm going to show you the book that I'm talking about that taught me how to make this quilt. So here's the book. This came in the kit. Get the glare off it. And it's called 3rd edition Start Quilting with Alex Anderson. Now, at the time, I did not know that this was one of the gurus of the quilting world. She takes you through in this book, step by step, how to do each one of those blocks. Now, in the book, here is a picture of the actual quilt done. And this picture is one of Alex Anderson's quilt. And you can see things are straight. There's some crisscross quilting in it. Things are even. The flying geese have points. All those things. So when you compare this to that, you can see I was a far cry from this. But it was my first one. Now, the thing I liked about this book, and if you're a beginner quilter, this is a great book to get because she goes through choosing fabrics, grain of fabric, preparing the fabric, how to cut it, all that kind of stuff. And then she gets into the basics about picking your fabrics if you didn't get it as a kit, and how to sew the different blocks and how to press the blocks as well. And she even takes you up to binding it and quilting it. So it's all in one in this book. So this is a great book if you're an absolute beginner and you want to get your feet wet. Easy to follow instructions. You will come out with the quilt, a quilt at the end of it, like that one. Now, I probably could, maybe someday as a project, I might redo this quilt, but do it on a much larger scale and then compare the two, because I think I've come a long way since then. You're a little crooked. Let's bring you around. Okay. So there you have it. That is me critiquing one of my quilts. Next week I'll find another quilt to cut up and show you all the pitfalls that I've had along the way, and I'm still making some of them. Okay, I don't think I have ever made a perfect quilt. Has anybody? Well, they're probably not pointing out their mistakes to you like I am. So as far as they're concerned, or as far as you're concerned, their quilt is perfect. And I was told once that the Amish have a philosophy. They purposely always put in one block that isn't quite right in a quilt. And the reason for that is because Only God is perfect. So that's why they do that. At least that's what I was told. I don't know if that's an old wives' tale, and maybe that's what Amish tell other people in case there is a mistake, that no, we did that on purpose. When I make a mistake, I call it a customization. Okay? All right. So that's all I have for you this week. So I hope you have a good time doing whatever craft you're doing. And if you're quilting, good for you. I'm certainly carrying on with my projects. And have a really great week. And thanks for joining me today. And tune in next week for another edition of The Idiot Quilter. Bye-bye for now.